Okay. So you are at hospital right now or at home?
Actually, we are intensive care doctors, so we are on shift duties. So right
Okay.
now, I have completed my shift duty only. So I am right now at home only.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for accepting the invite for all of us here. We are
I'm
all
glad to.
here only. There's no one else except the patients and caregivers of ALS patient. So,
Okay, ma'am.
so this is motor neuron disease. I have already shared you with the list, and
Okay.
if you want to, over to you. You want to share some other insight before we ask questions?
So there are the questions which are enlisted in front of me. I have just to reply on that questions only.
Yes, in case you want to include your own knowledge with whatever patients you have worked with, MND patients, and what you feel is
Yeah.
right for them overall, maybe besides the questions also. So please guide.
Basically, ma'am, this amylotropic lateral sclerosis, as we all know, it is a neuromotor, neuromuscular disease. So perhaps this involving both upper part and lower part of nervous system. So, so this the thing is, whenever we whenever we are having this type of problem to any individual, whosoever are having this type of problem, so it is involving upper neuron also and lower motor neuron also. Hello.
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
So primarily our role as an intensivist or a chest physician only comes when the chest involvement in a ALS patients come. So whenever patients are having breathing issues, whenever patients are having cough issues, whenever patients are not able to expectorate out their phlegm, then only the role of our as a chest physician comes. So uh, apart from these respiratory problems which are known as bronchial asthma or a COPD, the treatment of all neuromuscular diseases is slightly different from these all obstructive lung diseases. Likewise, if you are having an asthma problem or you are having a COPD problem, treatment of that is already totally different from neuromuscular diseases like amylotropic lateral sclerosis. But so what we are dealing in our group of patients are whenever patients of neuromuscular diseases like ALS or MND or so or multiple tissue disorders, ANA, SLE, some these patients are getting admitted. So treatment line of these patients are very different because we are categorizing these patients on two bases. If patient is less ill, if patient is following commands, if he or she is not okay, if they are okay with their all symptoms, but they are having infection in their chest. So we are giving them antibiotics, we are giving them nebulizers. But if they are more sick, other group of patients, so we are not waiting for, as we all know, we are not waiting for their oxygen to get better by applying oxygen or we will apply a BiPAP. We directly intubating that patient and putting them on ventilator till the time the infection getting subsided. So this is the treatment initial part, which is the intensive care part of neuromuscular diseases patients. Apart from treatment point of view, age factor is also important. If a extreme age of individual, likewise more than 60 years of age, having these issues, so this is known as a comorbid condition. If an old age fellow having neuromuscular disease problems, so in that patients we are limited way so that renal failure won't be happening. We are giving IV fluid not in a liberal fashion. We are giving in a conservative strategy so that fluid overload won't be happening to them. So we are giving, nourishing them. If patient is able to take food by himself, so we are giving him food by orally. If they are not able to take the food, we are giving enteral feed by inserting rice tube also. Because in all these neuromuscular diseases patient, first priority of our clinical treatment is to feed them. because feeding is the only part which will relieve mostly 50% of the symptoms of patients. Because if you are keeping them calorie deprived, they are going to land up in so many problems. They will develop hospital-acquired pneumonias. They will develop all respiratory illnesses. They won't, if he is on ventilator, he won't be able to come out of ventilators. So these are the all issues which are going to happen in these subgroup of patients, which specifically you people are telling about ALS patients, because I have 2 or 3 ALS patients who requiring not so much high ventilatory requirements, but I have cautiously and very much vigilant on their daily calorie intake and amount of protein that must be consumed every day. Because if we are giving them a sufficient amount of proteins and calories, so these patients won't be developing critical illness, myopathy or a neuropathy, which are very much debilitated and very much happening for patient in subsequently time. If we are going to see patients of ALS or any MNT patient in follow-up time of 3 to 6 months or 1 year, if you are going to keep them calorie deprived, they are going to develop muscle wasting and subsequently respiratory weakness also. And whosoever doctor is treating these patients, they won't be able to sustain. Any patient won't be able to survive for long. So my first priority of treating this patient is first to keep them calorie nourished. Second thing is for their nursing care. Nursing care should be at least whosoever the hospital is. What we have recommended in our ICUs and in our hospital is 1-to-1 nursing care. If the patient of a neuromuscular diseases or a critical ill patients, we are keeping 1-to-1 ratio. The patient, one patient to one sister only. Because cross-contamination of these patients are also very, very much common. So this is my clinical experience as per my ALS patient and all other respiratory patients. And coming to the questions.
So may I ask the individual himself, because they are part of the meeting?
Yeah,
So
definitely, ma'am. Yeah, definitely.
Pinakin, you are there, right? You can begin the questions which you have shared. Hello, Pinakin.
Yeah, hi. Satvinder, please ask on my behalf. Kindly.
Okay.
Hello?
I have a speech issue. That is the reason.
Okay. So he's a patient himself from Bombay, Pinakin. So he has asked, I think, 3 of the questions. Let me also open. So I have shared with you that question.
I have the sheet open. Shall I read out?
Yeah, please, Bharti.
Yeah. Hi, doctor. These are the questions from Pinakin. So he's saying, I don't have any breathing issues or swallowing issues as of now. What precautions should we proactively take to avoid breathing issues in the future?
How much is his weight?
Pinakin, over to you.
Weight is approximate 90.
And are you ambulatory? Are you walking?
Yes, sir. I am walking.
How many steps a day?
Right now, in this situation, I am not allowed to go out of my house, but I can walk almost.
But at least in home premises also.
Yeah, I can walk around 1 kilometer or more also. I don't
back
have
to the question.
Issues.
Okay, back to the question, please. Can you read out for me?
Yes. Yes. What precaution? I don't have any breathing issues or swallowing issues as of now. What precautions should we proactively take to avoid breathing issues in the future?
First and foremost, if so ever any individual or any patient are having breathing issue in the past related to any respiratory problem, whatsoever it might be, whether it is a asthma, whether it is a COPD, whether it's a ALS, or whether it's a MND. Same words or sentence I'm repeating. First and foremost, to avoid breathing problem to any individual whatsoever, whether he is a patient, whether he is a normal individual. So, to proactively induced in chest physiotherapy programs. Likewise, if we are having any issues in our chest and we have to take a home remedy for any breathing issue, for any future complaints we want to prevent. So first and foremost, to prevent any type of breathing problem is to take deep breath. Whenever we are stressed, we have to take deep breath. So deep breath can be taken in multiple ways. So specific pattern of taking deep breath are two ways. Two ways means two types of breathing you have to do. First is diaphragmatic breathing and second is pursed lip breathing. What is diaphragmatic breathing? Diaphragmatic breathing is our diaphragm is below our lungs, which is separating lungs from our abdomen. So every patient of neuromuscular disorder are having weakness of their diaphragm basically, because this is the main inspiratory muscle which is causing breathing problem in every individual. So if so ever we are having our strong diaphragm, so we won't be feeling this problem of breathing issues. So diaphragmatic breathing is a type of breathing that is mostly done in sitting position or lying down position by holding your tummy with both the hands. And you have to take deep breath in and out with your abdomen, and you have synchronized your breathing with your abdomen only. Whenever you are taking your breath, your tummy should come out, and whenever you are breathing out, your tummy goes down. So this is known as pursed lip breathing. This is known as diaphragmatic breathing. So first and foremost, in any individual whoever is concerned of breathing problem in future, they should try it out in every hour. If they able to do it, they should try diaphragmatic breathing. And second breathing I was talking, it is pursed lip breathing. Pursed lip breathing is you have to sit straight on a couch or a chair and you have to take normal breathing. And whenever you are taking a normal breathing, while removing your breath, while exhaling, you have to exhale for long by making your lips moving in a whistling mode. Likewise, if you are inhaling, you can inhale it. You have to hold your breath for a few seconds, and then whenever you are exhaling, you have to exhale in increment of 3 to 4 seconds. So you have to slowly exhale. You need not to fastly exhale. You have to slowly exhale for at least 3-4 seconds. So you can inhale in very slowly, and you have to exhale more slowly. So these are the two type of breathing. You can try it out for preventing your breathing problem in future. So first is diaphragmatic breathing and second is pursed lip breathing.
Doctor, regarding breathing, I have one doubt. You said about two types of breathing. So both is combined or one after the other? Or both are different?
One after the other. As much as your capacity of your body is there, you can do it as many as time. So this is the concern to respiratory system only. These are the pursed lip and the diaphragmatic. And the other is you have to keep your muscles around your lungs and all your body that should be strong enough to hold your lungs so that you won't be feeling any breathing issues. Likewise, you have to do passive training of your muscles, arms. You have to keep doing stretching exercise every day, morning, evening. So if stretching of your chest and the abdomen and your shoulder and your hands you are doing every day along with pursed lip breathing and diaphragmatic, I am 100% damn sure you won't be feeling any breathing issues in the future also.
Thank you, doctor. So I think second question is continuation of the same. Please advise natural solutions if possible. And the third question is, shall I continue?
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah. Please.
How do you rate Ibudilast, which is specifically an asthma medicine in Japan?
and people are using it here for ALS patient.
Okay. So the thing is, this drug is not recommended by our GINA. So we as a chest physicians, we all are following global initiative of asthma guidelines. We all follow GINA guidelines. But whosoever patients are having asthma and they are taking this drug, basically this is a vasodilator drug. This is a phosphodiesterase inhibitor drug. So whosoever person is taking this drug is going to dilate vessels. This drug is going to dilate bronchi and small airways also. So this is a vasodilator type of drug which can be recommended in this group of patients, because problem with MND and all these ALS patient is their airways are going to constrict after expiration. Whenever patient is breathe out, their airways are going to stick. So pathophysiology is different in subgroup of patient of these treatment of these patients. So this is a vasodilator type of drug. So many categories of vasodilators are available nowadays. So I have not a personal experience of this drug given to any of my patients. So we are giving in the form of epiphyllin. That is another form of drug, which is a vasodilator drug. So personally speaking, if you are taking phosphodiesterase inhibitor along with in this type of disease in asthma, so it is going to help any individual. But depending upon all the efficacy of a drug and the adverse effect of a drug, that should be kept in question every time.
Sir, one doctor question.
Yeah.
Sir, doctor, more cough is coming from the lungs during these days.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of cough comes.
Mm-hmm.
So what to do?
Mm-hmm. See, how much is your age, man?
Sir, not my father. He is of 53 age.
Okay. He is having any other associated problem as well?
Yeah, his limbs are not working and there is a problem in walking.
So he is also a ALS patient as well?
Yeah.
How long? So he is still weak, is able to ambulate, he is walking at home.
Yeah, he is walking
He
at
is all
home.
time lying. He is all time lying in bed.
Yeah.
So that is been
He always.
So the thing is, see, yeah, pardon.
Yes, sir.
You were telling your father was having so much phlegm coming nowadays. My question to you is,
Yeah.
is your father always lying in bed or he is ambulatory? He is moving around.
So he's lying on the bed. He lies on
For
the bed
how many?
and only he goes to washroom at that time.
For how many hours he is lying in bed? Because the thing
He
is,
lie
this
on the
is
bed
having a
and watch
relevance
movie.
related to phlegm. See, our lungs are
Doctor, whenever
is
he
a plastic
has
organ like balloon only.
washroom. Yeah.
Okay. See, the thing is, our lungs are like a balloon. Balloon are attached to a stick, and these sticks are coming through our mouth. So in other way, lungs are connected to through the mouth by a pipe which is known as trachea and airways. So whosoever person is lying, elderly individual, whosoever is more than 40 years of age, they are lying in bed for long hours, definitely they are going to expectorate more phlegm, because lungs are like a elastic structures. So productivity of sputum in age group of more than 40 are definitely going to increase in this era of setting in our India also, because this airways, the pipe which I was telling, bronchi, they are getting inflamed every time by environment, indoor and outdoor pollutions. So if I can assume 1 out of 50 fellows are having this bronchitis problem in their lungs. So continuously coming out of this cough for at least 3 months in a year, is termed as chronic bronchitis. If your father is having cough for at least 3 months in a year, it is terms to be known as chronic bronchitis. And if it is less than 3 months, definitely it is a postural. If person is lying for continuous few hours in bed and then he's going to phlegm more amount of sputum, it is going to come because lungs are elastic structure and productivity of sputum whenever person is lying in bed for long hours is going to increase. So encourage him to move, do some exercises, do some this pursed lip and diaphragmatic breathing. This cough is going to recover because any type of phlegm is not pathological unless and until it is associated with any type of fever or any type of breathing issues. Only cough can be associated with any type of food also. It can be associated with any type of stress also. It can be associated with any type of activity also. If you are working in a high industrial area, you can produce cough, but that is not a disease. So try to encourage him in a routine ambulatory part. Try to tell him to do more exercises, lung exercises, deep breathing exercises. If he's getting relieved of his phlegm, that is okay. If he's not getting relieved, you have to get him to do a X-ray and a pulmonary function test as well. Because pulmonary function test is the only test that will diagnose bronchitis problem, which I was telling, chronic bronchitis.
Yes, doctor. The next question is from Rajiv. Rajiv, would you like to ask or shall I ask?
Oh, so you can ask, like, no problem. Is there with you, right?
Yeah. If the patient is on Ryle's tube for feeding, so after the feed, it is advised to avoid BiPAP for almost an hour. If so, in this 1 hour, if patient goes breathless, then what should be done?
The question should be elaborated in terms of settings, whether it is a hospital setting or a home setting.
Home setting.
Home setting, sir.
If patient, if patient is on a home setting, how is the sensorium of the patient? Whether he's conscious or comatose?
No, like the thing is that he's conscious, but my main issue is that after Ryle's tube, suppose sometimes breathlessness happens. And I have been told by doctors that since we are feeding by Ryle's tube, do not put BiPAP at least for 30 to 35 minutes. That's what instruction I have got. Okay. So in that case, what should we do? Suppose breathlessness happen after feed.
See, I will clarify your doubt regarding this Ryle's tube feed. This is a precautionary measure the doctor have told you to avoid BiPAP for at least 1 hour. Because being a non-medical individual, it is not able to see if a patient aspirates the food content while applying BiPAP also. So this is the precautionary thing the doctor have told you. But our guidelines and as for our practice, this is recommend to continue the RT feed with BiPAP if a patient is conscious. But the thing is, you need not to keep patient in a straight couch. You need not to keep patient in a supine position. Patient should not be lying supine, straight on bed. If patient is lying straight on bed and he is comatose and slight drowsy, he is going to aspirate the food. So if a patient is on couch with 30 to 45 to 60 degree angle of head of bed, and if the BiPAP setting is not too much high, if IPAP is 14 and EPAP is 6, so person are not going to ingest air into their abdomen. Patient is, if you are taking precaution regarding that. If you are applying a 30 to 45 degree of angle to head of bed, and along with you are keeping BiPAP pressures not too much high, likewise above pressure is 14 and below pressure is 6 to 8, person are not going to develop aspiration if they are conscious enough. So, what I mean to say to this is, if you have given a RT feed to any individual, RT feed should not be too much that it will make distend the abdomen. If it is so we need not to over ingest the RT patients also. If whosoever patient is on RT feed, you have to consult a dietitian also, because the thing is, overfeeding is hazardous to individuals who are on BiPAP. So if you are giving a normal feed, normal RT feed to individuals which are not causing abdominal distension, patients are not complaining of any abdominal complaint or any abdominal distension or any flutters problem, you can apply BiPAP immediately also. Some amount of aerophagia or air ingestion also happen while applying BiPAP, but this is only happening when pressures are too much high. When EPAP is 10 and IPAP is 20, then only patients are getting this aerophagia problem. And other thing is, patients are quite obese. Their abdomen is very much tummy. They are quite obese. They are having this problem of aspiration and neglecting BiPAP for at least 1-2 hours. So be precautionary. If you want to apply BiPAP immediately only, you just keep a bed of 45-degree angle and apply with the BiPAP immediately also. There is no worrisome for that.
Okay, so sir, like in our case, like whenever we feed, she sits on the chair. Okay, she is capable enough, so she sits for half an hour and 45 minutes. So feed is done only by means straight, means 90 degrees, like no, we normally we are sitting on the chair.
Definitely,
like
yes.
And,
now you are right.
Yeah. So
you are doing right.
So
if you,
one thing, okay, sir. So one thing, when you started the discussion, so you told about the nourishment, the calorie part. Okay, so could you like advise the whole group that what is means particularly monthly for the breathlessness or for this kind of people, what kind of calorie intake do you recommend? Like since you started the topic with the nourishment.
Yeah, definitely. I will tell you. This is a very good question you asked me.
Yes, please.
So the thing is, this is,
yes, sir.
See, all critical patients who are not moving so much, they are on rice tube feed. They are on not on homemade foods. They are on commercial foods. Any critical, whenever critical word is coming in front of a patient, whenever a critical patient is on home care or anything, so our target of calorie intake daily is 1800 to 2000 kilocalorie per day. So 1800 to 2000 kilocalorie per day. If a normal individual is there, he's never got admitted to any type of hospital. Normally, adult individual like us would be requiring 2800 kilocalorie a day. Normally, a adult man will require 2800 kilocalorie per day. An adult woman will require 2200 kilocalorie per day. A pregnant lady will require 3900 kilocalorie per day. So if a critically ill individual is there, he will require 1800 to 2000 kilocalorie per day. This is a calorie intake, and the other is protein intake. So protein intake in a critical ill patient would be high. It would be 70 to 90 grams per day. So if a 90 grams you can be able to give, patients are going to recover very soon from their illnesses.
Thanks a lot, sir. Lots of information we got at this point. Because this is very critical and tricky situation for us as far as the nourishment is concerned. So thanks a lot for this.
Thank you.
Yeah. The next question is, does AC cause cough issues or pneumonia? And is there any preferred temperature we can use for pulse?
This is a very good question for asking a general population, because we in intensive care ICUs, our set point for keeping centralized AC temperature to around 22 to 24. If we are keeping much cold like 16 or so, patients are going to shiver. And 28, if we are keeping it, it is a marker of getting infection, because organisms are going to colonize the normal skin. So other part of question is whether it will cause cough or no. The thing is, AC won't be causing coughing to any individuals unless and until they are having upper airway problems. Likewise, our upper airway starts with nose. If we are having nasal stuffiness, every day we are itching our nose. We are eating ice cream, we are eating any cold stuff. any sensitivity of cold items leading to rhinitis, coughing, we are sneezing. So these fellows will be having trouble in their AC part. So this is known as upper airway rhinitis. So rhinitis is a medical term. In simple word, it is known as a person is having sneezing related to any cold items. They are having sinusitis, they are having nasal itching, they are having rhinitis, they are having pharyngitis, throat problem. They are having thick neck, they are having very obese, they are having coarse features. So these fellows will be having AC problem. Otherwise, normal individual, they won't be having this problem or so. So if a temperature set point is above 24, it is not going to help our patient in ICU because we are going to colonize their skin with bacteria. And if we are keeping our temperature to 16 or 18, then we are going to unnecessarily getting a shivering point in our patients, which could be misdiagnosis in some case also. Because standard set point for keeping a AC point, for keeping any type of individual or any critical patient at home is 20 to 24. So 22 to 24.
And we do not use any AC. So is it, normally we do not use AC? That is good.
It is okay for everyone. Yeah, that is a threshold point for any fellows. The temperature set point for any individual. If a person is able to comfortable at room air or anything, he is much more, and he is tolerant to environment also. If a person is more habitual to air conditioner also, he won't be able to tolerate that room air or temperature also. That is why person are getting perspirated while going out or doing shopping or so, because they are quite used to their ACs also. So whatsoever you are telling, that is quite beneficial for every individual. If you are able to tolerate yourself at your room temperature or atmospheric pressure or atmospheric air, this is well and good for every individual.
Thank you, Doctor. Yeah, we have many questions, so I'm going forward. There are questions these are questions from Usha. Yeah. She's asking foods to avoid which causes phlegm in lungs. Are there any foods to avoid which causes phlegm in lungs?
So this is the other type of question which can be answered in many ways. Say, cough is a natural phenomena of a body. Whenever we got stuck with any type of foreign body in our lungs, we are going to get the phlegm only. So the thing is, if a normal individual are having no lung issue or nothing, they won't be having any phlegm related to any food item. But specifically, which are enlisted that can cause mucus gland to stimulate and produce more cough, they are dairy products, milk products. They could be not toned milk, it is full cream milk, cheese products, the outside products. These are the only things which are more prone to cause more cough. If a person is having pre-existing cough previously and phlegm, if you are going to give him more curd, more butter impregnated milks or so, or dairy products or chocolate or so, or this all fast food or so, they are going to produce more cough because it is having a mechanism. Whenever any hot items or so, if you are taking a very hot milk or so, hot drinks, hot teas you are taking, and already pre-existing cough is going to be increased because mucus gland are stimulated into the lungs and they are going to produce more cough. This is a clinical practice which we have seen in so many individuals and patients. Patients are coming whenever they are correlating their symptoms with their all these food items also, because they were having pre-existing phlegm at present. If you are not having pre-existing phlegm, you are not going to having troubles with any food item.
Okay, thank you, doctor. So I think Usha is also there in the call, right? Usha, do you like to ask yourself? I think, Bharti, you can continue. Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Sir.
Hello, sir.
I'm not asking a question. I just want to make a comment. When you started, you said that in your ICU, you treat the ALS patients differently by providing one-to-one nursing. This thing. This is absolutely fantastic, and I think our experience, I would think that all the other patients and caregivers will agree, has been quite the contrary. Even in the best of the hospitals, MND, ALS patients are not given that kind of attention, and they are left to just normal nursing, and that causes a lot of problems, and not only bed sores, but many other problems, because most of the patients in ICU, ALS patients, they are at a stage where they can't communicate at all, and they need to be turned left and turned right. So this is something that's very remarkable. I think it's something to note.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Thakurji. Yeah, I wanted to, I'm asking questions on behalf of Usha. She asked me to do so because she's having small baby. So the next question is, how often ABG test is required so that to check CO2 levels so that we can adjust BiPAP settings?
Remember, if a person or any home-based patient, any home care patient is on home nursing care, if a nursing individual is present at home, he can, first of all, if a person is competent to do a ABG at home. If a obviously nursing fellow is there, he will be doing ABG. Because ABG is a sample which is taken from an artery. So, what my practice of taking ABG in this group of patients is, I am avoiding ABG every day in this group of patients. There is no recommendation of taking ABG every day and pricking their radial artery and their hand every day, because it is traumatic for patient and family as well. The thing is, whenever you are thinking that patient is not behaving as a usual times, likewise on a daily routine, likewise patient is not coherent with you, he is not talking with you, his vitals, his heart rate is shooting up, his sensorium is going down, is not ventilating on BiPAP or an invasive ventilator. So there are 3 or 4 signs which are the chances of CO2 levels that must be monitored by a home care nurse or an individual at home. But my practice of treating all these patients are not to do routine ABG. What I am doing is, I am doing their venous blood gas, not a ABG, arterial blood gas. Venous blood gas can be correlated with arterial blood gas as well. You just have to manipulate your reading on 3 to 4 mmHg in view of CO2 setting. Likewise, if you are taking a venous sample for ABG, and if you are taking arterial sample for ABG, if a ABG showing PCO2 level of 40, so VBG will be showing around 43. So none of this difference is going to make. First thing of my preference is avoid ABG if patient is stable. If patient is unstable, then obviously you have to take a ABG every day or every 48 hours or so. ABG, if patient is at home, avoid ABG, because CO2 levels are shooting up. If any patient, if CO2 levels are shooting in every patient, if they are very much high, patient are going to show their symptoms. They are going to be drowsy. They will not be ventilating on their BiPAP. Their heart rate will shoot up. Their saturation level will fall. That is the recommendation for an emergency, that you have to do ABG routinely. So I will come to my point. Routine use of arterial blood gas on a home care ALS patients is not recommended unless and until it is clinical relevance in view of recent deterioration of symptom. Patient is not having any sign of normal clinical activity. He is drowsy and he is not coherent. So that is the only setup when you require ABG. Otherwise, ALS patient don't require regular ABG. It is only a clinical call whenever it is required. So it should not be done by any clinician routinely. Because if a patient is on NIV or BiPAP, you can change your setting by 1 or 2 if PCO2 levels are slightly high or low. So if a stable patient, you are doing ABG at least twice a day, this is not going to benefit the patient. And because you are not going to change the setting of a BiPAP or a ventilator. If PCO2 in first reading, it is come out to be slight high, and in evening reading, it come out to be more than around 10 centimeter of Hg high. So routine use of ABG, especially ABG, should be avoided in all these neuromuscular patients. If recommended, it should be told to every clinician that try to take VBG, venous blood gas, venous sample at least, so that it should be comfortable for the patient and it should not be alarming for every time for use of any specialized nurse to taking arterial blood sample.
Okay, sir. Thank you for that. But just related to this question, so is this possible that somebody has a proper saturation level, 95 and above? And also their CO2 accumulation would be high. Is this some kind of such situations also occur?
See, ma'am, the thing you are telling is that is 2 parts. One is oxygenation, other is ventilation. These are my lectures also, which I am keep on telling every individual. The thing you told is that saturation is subnormal. This means oxygenation is normal. This means alveoli and lungs are getting enough oxygen. That is oxygenation. Other thing is ventilation, CO2 part. Ventilation means your chest is moving or not. If your chest is not moving, this means patient is not getting ventilated. He is getting oxygen, but he is not getting ventilated. Ventilation means oxygen is going in, but he is not removing carbon dioxide. So if he is not removing carbon dioxide, that is known as CO2 retention. So CO2 retention is a clinical call. If your patient is not moving your chest and your saturation level is normal, especially in ALS patient, ALS patient won't be showing any drop of saturation at any point. You won't be telling anybody or any doctor that saturation, whenever patient, yes, but whenever a patient of ALS or anything go to the hospital, doctor will ask you what happened. You will tell, yes, immediately he went into drowsiness. And he will ask you, what about the saturation? No, doctor, saturation was normal. The thing is, oxygenation is not the problem. We can see on monitor, yes, oxygen is normal, saturation is normal. Problem with MND and all ALS patient and neuromuscular patient is not the oxygenation part, it is the ventilation part. Whether the patient chest is moving with BiPAP or invasive ventilator or not. If chest is not moving, patient is not exhaling his carbon dioxide, that is not that is pure a clinical sign that will be seen by a clinician only. So that will be seen on a ABG or a clinician who is seeing the patient at his home only.
Okay, so, thank you. Very good point. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Yeah. Bharti, you can continue with the next question.
Yeah, thank you, doctor. So the next question is about pneumonia vaccine for ALS patients. So is it mandatory to get the vaccination?
Yeah, it is mandatory. The thing is, the thing you are telling me, it is known as adult vaccination program. Adult vaccination program as per guidelines of pneumonia of IDSP, Integrated Disease Surveillance. IDSP is the American guideline for pneumonia, and the Indian Chest Society also. Pneumococcal vaccination is recommended in all individuals who are above 60 and 65 plus age, along with comorbid condition. Comorbid condition could be anything. Likewise, he is a long-standing hypertension for last 10 years. He is diabetic for last 10 years. He is having neuromuscular diseases like ALS, MND, MLCD, SLE, dermatomyositis. All normal patient, less than 60 won't be requiring pneumococcal vaccine, but all adult patient 60 and more than 60 and with comorbid condition, they will be requiring pneumococcal vaccination because 90% of our pneumonia, community-acquired pneumonia, who are coming from society admitting to the hospital are caused by Streptococcus pneumoniae. And Streptococcus pneumonia, if developed to any individual more than 60 years of age, it is very catastrophic. It is very deadly for the individual to die with only a community-acquired pneumonia. Community-acquired pneumonia, if diagnosed early, it can be very, treatment part is very successful for these patients. So better to avoid. Preventive effort is by pneumococcal vaccine. This vaccine is known as Pneumovax 23. Pneumovax 23 is a live vaccine. It is a polysaccharide vaccine. So you can take it as one-time shot and you have to repeat every 5 years. So the problem with Pneumovax 23 is it is polysaccharide vaccine. So after 5 years, some fellows are not able to remind, or they won't be able to see that they have taken this shot of pneumococcal vaccine in past about 5 years or so. So the thing is, nowadays in market, new vaccine of pneumococcal have come that is known as conjugative vaccine that came with name of Prevenar 13. That is a conjugated vaccine. So conjugated vaccine is a type of hybrid vaccine. You can take as a one-time shot of this pneumococcal vaccine. You need not be requiring a booster dose after 5 years or so. So this is a one-time shot this is add-on information for this pneumococcal vaccine, which I am telling to every individual.
Yeah,
So,
thank you, doctor. Actually, regarding these two vaccines, so both are equally good. We can go for any one of them, or do they have any side
Actually,
effects?
Prevenar 13 is somewhat costly, but it is one-time vaccine. You have to apply only one time, and you just forget that I have been vaccinated in past. So Pneumovax 20 and Pneumovax 23, it is 2,200 rupees vaccine. It will be repeated after 5 years. So it is very difficult for us to remember that we have vaccinated in past about 5 years or so. So nowadays we are recommending Prevenar 13 to our patient because it is a conjugative vaccine.
Sure, doctor. There is one question. I think it's already answered. I just will read out. Oxygen level is 95 plus in lay down elevated position, still feeling breathlessness. So is this covered? I am not very clear about this.
The thing is, if a person is having saturation of 95 and is feeling breathless in lying down position, so something related to 3 problems it could be. Whether patient is full stomach. If he's having very full stomach, his stomach is full, he will be breathless. It is a normal phenomenon. If I am in a full stomach and I will lie down immediately without any pillow, so I will be feeling breathless because our trachea, our food pipe, and our trachea in wind pipe and food pipe, they are lying adjacent to each other. So whenever your stomach is full and your esophagus food pipe is full, it is going to impinge on your windpipe. So it is going to compress your trachea whenever you are lying down and whenever you are too much heavy when you are lying down. So this is a normal phenomena of breathing issue that can happen to any individual. And it is a normal phenomena. And if it is an abnormal phenomena, which is known as pathological in medical terms, that could be related to so many problems. That could be related to gastritis, that could be related to heart problems, that could be related to angina, that could be related to gastric problems, so many problems. So that you have to see a scenario, whether your patient is obese, he took a large meal, immediately after the meal, more liquid meal he took. If a more liquid meal he took in night and immediately lie down, so these breathing issues will be quite often will be happening to them also. But the thing is, if he's quite young, He's not overweight.
He's 51 and he's not overweight.
He's not 51. He's 51. And what about food habit? At which time he is developing these breathing issues? Morning and evening time?
Usha, I think he's also feeling heavy after lunch. So probably
So might be take. So they should try a course of antacid, pentacid, pantoprazole, morning and evening time before meals, and try this treatment or so. If they are feeling better, so it was a GERD problem, gastroesophageal reflux problem, that was causing him breathing issues. If it is not getting relieved with antacid or anything, so then you have to consult any doctor. Otherwise, it is not of a major problem. Around 70 to 80 times it is related to GERD problem, GERD, gastroesophageal reflux problems that are causing breathing issues.
okay. Okay, doctor, thank you. He's facing this problem only sometimes.
Yeah.
So, yeah. The next question is from Murthy ji. And the question is how to strengthen diaphragm? Is there any medicine or exercises? I have used, he has specified one medicine. It is, I can't name it, Abaflin capsule for breathing problem. It has
Abifilin.
Yeah, it has created a gastric problem. Then I stopped it.
See, Abifilin should not be taken without a medical supervision. Abifilin is a vasodilator drug. As compared to, so I was talking about a GINA guideline. GINA guideline is a global initiative for asthma guideline, which any chest physician or any, we all are following one standard group of experts to teach our patients about the drug also. So Abifilin is a group of vasodilator drug. Whenever a person is taking Abifilin, it is going to dilate every organ of our body. Trachea, it is going to dilate. Blood vessel, it is going to dilate. It is going to dilate everything. So it is not having so many good efficacies. It is having more problems, more adverse drug reactions. So this drug should not be taken without a medical supervision because it is not having beneficial effect. It is having more adverse effect. Adverse effect in the form of gastric problems, palpitations, increased heart rate, anxiety problems. So I won't be recommending this drug to be taken by every individual. It is only an add-on drug.
Okay, so this is in the case with Ibudilast also. This is in the same family.
Basically, these all are vasodilator drugs. So, if a vasodilator drug you are giving to any individuals, you have to keep cautious about their symptoms. You have to keep encourage them about your symptoms. That whenever, sir or ma'am, you are having problem with your gastric, whenever you are having increased heart rate, whenever you are having anxiety palpitations, or some anxiety problems you are developing with these kind of drugs, immediately inform to the doctor and consult us because these drugs are vasodilator drugs. They are going to increase blood flow to the heart. Whenever increased blood flow to the heart happens, palpitation happens. Person are going to feel their heart rate. Person are going to develop, if a blood vessel is going to dilate in brain, you are going to develop headaches frequently. If a lady is having migraine, you are taking Abifilin or that drug, you are going to develop more headaches or more migraine episodes. So that thing should be seen by every individual.
Thank you, doctor. Very informative.
Yeah,
this knowledge we cannot get anywhere. Yeah. The next question is from me. My father is having difficulty in swallowing. Many times he coughs and sneezes during the meal. He has to clear his throat due to the phlegm formation. So will steaming and nebulization before the meal help him?
Nebulization is only recommended to a obstructive lung disease. Obstructive lung disease is a respiratory problem that is causing problem into the lungs. That is obstructing the trachea. So whenever a person is having asthma or a COPD, that is only the diseases where nebulization is helpful. If a person is having swallowing issues and something is stuck into the throat, nebulize is not going to benefit him. Because over-the-counter taking of nebulization contains drug in the form of steroids. So if we are nebulizing our relative with any form of steroids, steroid should go to the lungs, not to the stomach. If steroid medications are going to the stomach, they are going to cause many problems over there. So if he's having breathing issues or any eating problem, stop nebulization. Yes, you can tell him to do gargles or steam. Steam might be helping some individuals, but nebulization, no.
Thank you, doctor. We have not started it, but I was thinking whether to start.
Yeah. Because the thing is, over-the-counter nebulization are mostly containing steroids. So avoid steroid whenever possible.
Yes. The next question is from Deepti. Deepti, would you like to ask? Okay, I will ask on Deepti's behalf. As per doctor, my dad has weak lungs and he can hold his breath only for 6 to 7 seconds. So what should we be doing to improve the capacity?
How much is the age of this father?
Sir, age of my dad is 65.
So ma'am, 3 or 4 things you can do at home. Because it is an age-related decrease in vital capacity of lungs. See, vital capacity of lungs of every individual is 2 to 3 liters at an age group of 20 to 30 years. So every passing year, we are decreasing our vital capacity by around 50 to 100 ml. So it is an age-related decrease in vital capacity of our lung because lungs are like a balloon of every individual. So balloons are more elastic during the young age and they are less elastic during the aged years. So to make them work, old age lungs, to make them work or make them more elastic. So it is in medical term, it is known as a compliance of the lung. If a compliance of balloon is not good, it is not going to inflate and deflate. So the problem happen in old age is compliance of lungs are not so much good. If you are inflating your balloon with air, they are not going to deflate as frequently as it was happening during youngster age. So to increase the compliant and capacity or vital capacity of lung, you can try pursed lip breathing, you can try diaphragmatic breathing. You can buy a spirometer, 3-ball spirometer at home. It is easily available at every shop or so. So you can buy a spirometer. You can hold spirometer in front of his face and you have to blow in and blow out of that spirometer. Spirometry is one term of instrument. It is going to help to increase the vital capacity of old age individuals along with pursed lip breathing and diaphragmatic breathing. That is the thing you can do.
Okay, doctors, the second issue was while having his meal and while drinking of water. Means earlier he used to have his liquid diet via glass, but now he is turning it into a bowl. Means bowl में डालते हैं, उसके बाद he intakes that, which is again creating swallowing problem. Means last night he was having his medicine and the water got into the nose as well, which created a lot of breathing problem during night. So in that case, what we can do to help the breathing issues?
I have not understand the question. Was he able to take the water or was he not able to take the water? Or whether he took a large amount of water?
Means he is not correctly able to have the water intake.
Because of?
Because of the swallowing issues due to MND.
Okay. So your question, can you repeat the question, please?
Sir, I just wanted to ask that how we can improve his swallowing problem, which is again creating the breathing issues while having his meal or while having his liquid intake.
See, the thing is, the part you are telling it is associated with bulbar involvement of ALS patients. So
Yeah.
bulbar palsy, it is known as bulbar palsy. So whenever this bulbar palsy happens, these swallowing problems are going to happen in individual. You can, I can help you out in a small way, that if you want to give any type of food or any type of liquid to these individuals, try to give in small increments, try to give in small amount. If you will give in large amount, they are going to have this problem, because this is a problem which is related to bulbar palsy. Bulbar palsy is going to cause dysphagia. Dysphagia problem is going to happen to them. So no remedy or special treatment for that is, you have to give in a small frequent meals. And if you want to give him a water, you have to give in a small amount, around 10 to 20 ml, in sips amount. Otherwise, you won't be able to, if you are giving in a large out of drink in one shot, he is going to develop this problem. So this is a bulbar involvement of ALS. There is not so much treatment for it. If you want to try it, try to give it in a sip or a straw pattern. If you want to give it if you want to give water, you can give him a straw. He can sip in slowly. So you won't be developing any problem.
Okay, we had an appointment with the acupressure doctor, and he told that his lungs are contracting and the posture is getting in a curved shape. Means the lungs are turning into curve shape. So how we can control that posture also?
Posture related swallowing problem can be related to scoliosis also. Scoliosis, that is a curved portion of a spine, that is a concavity towards the outside. That is all related to your capacity of your lungs. That is, see, swallowing problem is not related to the lungs. Let me clarify, because food pipe and wind pipe are totally different. If a person is having issues with their bulbar involvement, likewise these ALS patients, they are going to having this dysphagia, but not because of the lungs. Posture, I can tell you, if you want to give him any type of fluid or anything, just to give him in an upright position, not in a droop or a lying down position. Posture is only helpful in that kind of thing only. Otherwise, it is not so much helpful for you.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you, doctor. The next question.
And sir, a small question on Iberdomide, sir. So many of the pals in the group, they are using Iberdomide since months and years, and some of they stopped it using because they had symptoms. And some of they didn't see any side effects. Is it side effects? Is it okay to use it? Is it okay to continue it?
If you are not having any symptoms, try to continue. Because it is a phosphodiesterase inhibitor, very informative and very good results in bronchial asthma. If you are not having any problem, you can continue with this.
Okay, thank you.
Very nice question. Thank you. So the next question is from Dipshika. So the question is, how long can we nebulize our patient, as we are nebulizing our father since 15 days?
You are nebulizing with which drugs? That is most important in this question.
Dipshika, can you respond?
I think Deepshika is not there in the call.
But the thing is, I will.
So what are the drugs which are fine to give for nebulization?
See, the thing is, avoid nebulization with everybody here, whosoever is listening. Everybody should be aware of Budecort nebulization. So avoid Budecort in all ALS and all group of 20 or BiPAP patients. Budecort is budesonide, it is a steroid group of drug. Avoid in this group of patients, because Budecort is a steroid. It won't be helping in this group of patients. If you want to relax your airways, dilate your airways, improve your breathing, try to nebulize with short-acting salbutamols like Deolane, Livolane, and this type of drug, putting up more.
But this is a temporary phase. This, if he is triggered for due to some reason, we cannot make out what is happening. But if we soothe him, then it comes down slowly. But there is tachypnea and this wheeze.
If he is having this issue frequently and more often, then you might have to consult for a X-ray and all those things, investigation. But the thing is, if he is having a respiratory issue and a respiratory problem, this patient, if you are telling me that he is having if he is a known case of bronchial asthma, is a known case of COPD, so he can develop these kind of symptoms frequently, then you need not to do much into that. You have to just keep on going and giving nebulization also. But you are telling
no, he is not a known case of asthma. He did not have any asthma or COPD. He was a regular yoga person. He was doing his yoga regularly, but now he's totally dependent for all his activities. But these episodes are becoming frequent.
So in that case, you have to do an X-ray and a pulmonary function test.
Pulmonary function test he cannot do. There is no vital capacity. He cannot breathe out even for 5-6 seconds.
So at least do a chest X-ray or a plethysmography. So plethysmography won't be happening in a practical fashion, but at least do a X-ray also, just to see what is happening.
We have done it. X-ray is normal.
Any type of CT or anything? CT done in past also?
No. CT was done in the past, but I don't think there are no adventitious sounds. CT is not indicated in this case.
Okay. So
this is episodic.
This is episodic. So you might be right that he must be having a sympathetic surge of anything.
Yeah.
But the thing is, any type of wheezing can be associated with any respiratory problem or a cardiac problem. So cardiac problem do cause wheeze sometimes, but it is not frequent. So if a patient of cardiac symptoms are having heart failure, they are also causing wheezing. But you are telling that he is having tachypnea, tachycardia, so something is triggering him. So that would be able to be seen clinically. I can't comment at this point only, because we have to see clinically which thing is triggering the patient every time that he is requiring so much nebulization and he is having so much wheeze. So you can consult any doctor also for that symptoms.
It comes, all this subsides without any treatment.
Yeah, pardon?
Without any treatment. You just have to soothe him.
So,
this is just a job sympathetic overacting.
You can watch this symptom. See, you are right, ma'am. The thing is, if he is having subside of this symptom within a minute or so, you need not to do much. If he is having this persistent symptom, then you have to evaluate for whole other thing as well. Likewise, you have to do a cardiac evaluation for seeing any right and left-sided heart pressure. How much are the right-sided pressure? How much are the left-sided pressure? How much is the ejection fraction of heart? So these issues can cause sympathetic issue. Likewise, you are telling. So if a echo was not done in past, try to evaluate for echo and all this dobutamine testing.
And all
if you are
has been done actually, ejection fraction is normal.
Okay. And the right and left heart
we
pressures.
can't figure out what is happening at those during these episodes. And it's to manage during that time.
So it is happening during day or night?
At times during the day and mostly during the day, but at times at night also he is having.
We have to see him. We have to see him clinically. Otherwise, we won't be able to make a diagnosis.
Dr. Neena?
Yes.
thanks for asking this question. I think that was that would require I think detailed discussion with the doctor. So maybe we can consult him one to one.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Dr. Meena. So thank you, doctor. I think we are done with the questions. Bharti?
Yeah, we have some more questions which came in later. If we have time, I'll go ahead. Dr. Kuldeep, is it fine? Can we ask?
Yeah,
one or
I'm
two more?
feeling some encouraging thing. I'm also.
Yeah, sure. We are very happy to have you. Yeah, we have very young, the youngest among us is asking one question. He's a sports person.
Yeah.
He is a national player of hockey and also, I think, volleyball. So after this diagnosis, he has lost some weight and he's saying just काफी compact हो गया है. Is it because of this disease? And is there any diet recommendation for young patients like him?
Which diet he must be taking?
He's a vegetarian. He's 22 years old. Like any.
See, the thing is, he must be developing myopathies. So for correcting myopathies, two things are very important. Likewise, I told initially, how much is the protein intake, how much is the calorie intake, and any antioxidant he must be taking also. Any coenzyme Q is taking his or not. Any neuropathic drug, what is the vitamin B12 level, what are the vitamin D3 levels. So these things are more prone to get depleted in this group of young individuals. If they are having very low vitamin D levels, they are going to develop this. If they are having very low vitamin B12 level, they are going to develop this. So try to do an investigation of their vitamin B12 and D3 first and foremost. Other thing is amount of protein
in the chest are getting disintegrated. So like he's feeling there is loss in the chest muscles, or he's feeling that the muscles are decreasing, or he's kam ho raha hai.
So this is probably a muscle wasting which is happening to him. So for preventing a muscle wasting in an already progressive disease, we can just replenish the amount of loss if is happening every day in the form of antioxidant. He must be replenishing him.
Okay.
Other way, likewise I was telling vitamin D3 or B12 level, that should be in the normal limits. And otherwise they will require a booster. And first and foremost for improving muscle wasting or anything in the body is to increase protein intake. If the dietitian make his protein intake more than 1 gram per day, if his protein intake is more than 1 gram, 100 grams, 100 grams, then this muscle wasting won't be happening. So likewise, I was telling you, average individual is taking 70 to 80 grams per day. So if a MND or any ALS patient developing muscle wasting, he should increase his protein intake and he should take more than 120 or 150 grams of proteins. If he can tolerate it, he can add on protein powder also.
Yeah. One question is regarding the protein powder. If you can suggest any good protein powder.
Yeah.
I know
protein powder is,
but we see you're very knowledgeable. So.
Yeah. Protein powder can be given in. So 1 scoop. Always see, the thing is, now all commercial powder are coming with lots and lots amount of sugar in it. So whatsoever protein powder has been recommended by any doctor, it is containing more amount of fructose and sugars. So it is more focusing on calorie intake, not on protein intake. So you are going to suppress your appetite whenever you are taking protein. It is only because of that sugar levels. So we are not going to suppress our appetite because of carbohydrate. We need our boosting and appetite, full appetite, by boosting our protein levels. So one protein powder is coming in name of Cabipro, K-A-B-I-P-R-O, Cabipro. It 1 scoop contains 42 grams of proteins. So it is quite good enough So at least 42 grams one scoop, if it is, so you can take 2 scoops in the morning, afternoon. So it will replenish more amount of protein in your body. So there are so many as well, but this is the one which I am recommending to my patients.
Sure, doctor. Thank you so much. Over to Satvinder.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. You have taken the questions and given the detailed answers, whatever we could understand. So there's a lot of knowledge for us, which you have shared, your expert knowledge. So it's going to be very helpful. And I'll be sharing your visiting card already shared with the group, and they will be contacting you one-to-one in case there is individual discussion they want to have it. So thank you so much for giving us time and for this community. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.